Virginia Matthews stood before her father's desk, her trembling hands clutching the faded blue fabric of her skirt as the terrible words hung in the air between them. It was April 1875 in the drought-stricken town of Copper Creek, Arizona Territory, and her world had just collapsed beneath her feet. "You've already done it? Sold me like cattle?" Virginia's voice cracked as she stared at the man who had raised her, now a stranger with hardened eyes and a gaunt face lined with desperation. Thomas Matthews slammed his palm against the weathered oak desk, making the oil lamp flicker. "What choice did I have, girl? The bank's taking everything come Monday. Everything your mother built before she died. The ranch, the horses, all of it." Virginia flinched but held her ground. At 20 years old, she'd known hardship, but nothing had prepared her for this betrayal. Outside the window of their modest ranch house, she could see the parched earth that had once been fertile grazing land. 3 years of drought had withered their dreams along with the grass. "Mr. Everett is a respectable man," her father continued, his voice softening in a way that frightened her more than his anger. 53 ain't so old. He's got money, connections. As his wife, you'll never go hungry." "His wife," Virginia whispered, feeling ill. Harold Everett owned the mercantile in town, a widower 3 times over with a reputation for meanness that even his wealth couldn't disguise. "Father, please. There must be another way." Her younger sister Emma appeared in the doorway, her 13-year-old face streaked with tears. "Ginny, is it true? Are you leaving us?" Before Virginia could answer, the sound of approaching hoofbeats drew their attention. A rider was coming fast down the dusty road to their ranch. "That'll be Everett's man with the first payment," her father said, straightening his worn vest. $500 now, $500 when you're wed next week. It'll keep the rest of us from starving, at least." Virginia felt her chest tighten. "You've already spent some of it, haven't you?" The guilt in her father's eyes confirmed it. "How much is left?" $300, he muttered. "Had to settle with Jenkins for that seed we never could plant." The hoofbeats grew louder, then stopped. Heavy bootsteps crossed the porch. Virginia squared her shoulders, determined not to show her fear to whoever had come to collect her. The knock was firm but not aggressive. Thomas Matthews opened the door to reveal not the expected clerk, but a tall figure backlit by the harsh afternoon sun. "Mr. Matthews?" The voice was deep with a slight Texas drawl. "Name's Grant Sullivan. I understand you've entered into an arrangement with Harold Everett regarding your daughter." Virginia moved closer, getting her first clear look at the stranger. He wasn't dressed like Everett's men. His clothes were trail-worn but of good quality, a dark shirt, leather vest, and denim pants tucked into well-used boots. The Colt revolver at his hip looked as natural as his hand. He removed his hat, revealing sun-streaked brown hair and eyes the color of whiskey. "What business is it of yours?" her father asked warily. The man Sullivan stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. His gaze swept the room before settling on Virginia. Something flickered in his eyes that she couldn't decipher. "I'd like to make a counter-offer," he said simply. Thomas Matthews frowned. "Everett's already paid $1,000, Sullivan interrupted, "for the termination of any arrangement you have with Harold Everett regarding Miss Matthews." Virginia gasped. Her father's mouth fell open. "Who are you?" Virginia asked, finding her voice. Sullivan's eyes met hers directly. "Someone who knows what kind of man Harold Everett really is, madam. And I can't in good conscience let another woman fall into his hands." $1,000, her father repeated numbly. "For what, exactly?" "For nothing," Sullivan replied. "Miss Matthews remains free to make her own choices. The money is hers to do with as she pleases." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Virginia stared at the stranger, searching for the catch, the hidden motive. Men didn't simply appear offering fortunes for nothing in return. "Why would you do this?" she finally asked. Sullivan's face remained impassive, but something haunted passed behind his eyes. "Let's just say I'm settling an old debt, one that isn't yours to pay." Her father stepped forward. "Now see here, I also have another proposition," Sullivan continued, ignoring him. "I'm buying the old Peterson place 10 miles west. Good water there even in this drought. I need hands who know ranching, paying fair wages too." "The Peterson place has been abandoned for years," Thomas said. "Not anymore." Sullivan reached into his vest and withdrew a leather pouch. $1,000, Miss Matthews. No strings attached. Whether your father accepts my job offer or not." Virginia's heart hammered in her chest. Freedom being offered by a complete stranger while her own father had been willing to sell her future. It seemed impossible, yet the man before her radiated a quiet certainty that made her want to believe. "This is between men," her father began, but Sullivan cut him off. "No, sir. This is about Miss Matthews' life. The decision should be hers." Virginia took a step forward, then another until she stood directly before the cowboy. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the small scar above his right eyebrow, the steady resolve in his expression. "Why should I trust you?" she asked quietly. Sullivan held her gaze. "You shouldn't. Not yet. But I'm offering you a choice, which is more than Everett would give you." Virginia glanced at her father, then at Emma still hovering fearfully in the doorway, before turning back to Sullivan. She slowly extended her hand. "I accept your offer, Mr. Sullivan." The cowboy nodded once, placing the leather pouch in her palm. The weight of it, the weight of possibility, nearly made her knees buckle. "Pa can work for you," she said, her voice growing stronger. "So can I. We'll earn our keep." Sullivan replaced his hat. "I'll expect you both at the Peterson place tomorrow at dawn. Then, bring your sister too. There's a caretaker's cottage that should suit you fine until you decide what you want to do." As he turned to leave, Virginia called after him. "Mr. Sullivan? You never said what I owed you in return." He paused at the threshold, silhouetted once again by the sun. "Not everyone collects on their debts, Miss Matthews. Sometimes paying them forward is enough." With that, he was gone, leaving Virginia clutching a small fortune and wondering what storm this mysterious cowboy would bring into her already upended life. The following dawn broke clear and cool, painting the eastern sky in shades of gold and pink. Virginia had barely slept, her mind racing with questions about Grant Sullivan and his unexpected intervention. The leather pouch containing the $1,000 remained hidden in the lining of her mother's old trunk, secure beneath a false bottom. Their wagon rolled along the rutted trail toward the Peterson place, their few possessions and supplies loaded in the back. Emma sat between Virginia and their father, unusually quiet. "I still don't trust him," Thomas Matthews muttered, flicking the reins. "Men don't just give away money." Virginia gazed at the horizon. "You were willing to sell me to Harold Everett without a second thought. At least Sullivan offered me a choice." Her father flinched. "That was different. I was trying to save the family. By sacrificing one of us," Virginia replied quietly. "I understand why, Pa. But please don't pretend it was noble." They lapsed into uncomfortable silence until the Peterson place came into view. Virginia had only vague memories of it from her childhood, a sprawling ranch that had once been the pride of the territory before Old Man Peterson died and his sons abandoned it for the California gold fields. Now, as they approached, she was surprised to see signs of renewed life. The main house, a substantial 2-story structure of stone and timber, had fresh paint on its shutters. Smoke curled from the chimney. In the corral, several fine horses watched their approach with pricked ears. 2 men were unloading supplies from a wagon near the barn. One was Grant Sullivan, The other, a broad-shouldered Mexican man with a magnificent mustache. Sullivan spotted them and raised a hand in greeting, walking over as they pulled up to the hitching post. "Mr. Matthews, Miss Matthews," he nodded, then smiled at Emma. "And you must be the younger Miss Matthews." Emma ducked her head shyly. Virginia climbed down from the wagon, brushing dust from her skirt. "You've been busy, Mr. Sullivan." "This place looks different already." "Been at it for 2 weeks," Sullivan replied. "Got more supplies coming from Tucson next week. Manuel here knows every inch of this land." He gestured to the Mexican man, who approached with a friendly nod. Manuel Ramirez was foreman for old Peterson for 15 years. Stayed on even after everyone else left. "Pleasure to meet you all," Manuel said in accented but clear English. "The caretaker's house is ready for you. My wife Rosa has prepared some food." Thomas Matthews looked uncomfortable but managed a civil greeting. Virginia knew her father's prejudices, one of many things they disagreed on, but she was pleased to see him make the effort. "If you'll follow Manuel, he'll show you where you'll be staying," Sullivan said. "Once you're settled, Mr. Matthews, I'd like to discuss the water situation and where we stand with the herd I'm bringing in next month." As Manuel led her father and Emma toward a tidy cottage visible beyond a stand of cottonwoods, Sullivan turned to Virginia. "Walk with me a moment, Miss Matthews?" Curious, Virginia fell into step beside him as he led her toward the corral. Up close in the morning light, she could study him better. He moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin. His face was tanned and weathered, but she guessed he wasn't much over 30. "I want to be clear about something," he said as they reached the fence. "You're not obligated to stay here. The money is yours regardless." Virginia watched the horses, gathering her thoughts. "I appreciate that, but I need to make sure my family is secure, and I'm not afraid of hard work. From what I've heard in town, you're quite the horsewoman." "My mother taught me," Virginia replied, a smile touching her lips at the memory. "She was better with horses than most men in these parts. Before she got sick." Sullivan nodded, his eyes on the chestnut mare that had approached the fence. "This one reminded me of you. Spirited but gentle. Good instincts." Virginia reached out, letting the mare sniff her hand before stroking its velvety nose. "She's beautiful. What's her name?" "Doesn't have one yet. Perhaps you'd like to do the honors." Virginia studied the mare's intelligent eyes. "Liberty," she said softly. "Her name is Liberty." Sullivan's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "Fitting. Mr. Sullivan, Grant," he corrected. "Grant, then. I still don't understand why you're doing this. The money, this job. You don't know us." His expression turned serious. "Let's just say I recognize a bad situation when I see one. Everett has buried 3 wives already. 2 died under questionable circumstances." Virginia felt a chill. "What do you mean?" "The last one, Catherine, was found at the bottom of the stairs with a broken neck. Everett claimed she was drinking and fell. But folks who knew her said she never touched a drop." His jaw tightened. "No one could prove otherwise, and Everett has the sheriff in his pocket." "How do you know all this?" Grant's eyes darkened. "Catherine was my cousin. By the time I learned what had happened, it was too late. I've been watching Everett ever since, waiting for a chance to." He trailed off, then shook his head. "When I heard in the saloon that he'd arranged to buy himself another wife, I knew I had to intervene." Virginia absorbed this, understanding now the pain she'd glimpsed in his eyes. "I'm sorry about your cousin. I couldn't save her," Grant said quietly, "but I could offer you a different path." Before she could respond, a shout came from the direction of the main house. Manuel was waving, pointing to an approaching rider. Grant's expression hardened. "That's Everett's foreman, Wade Taylor. You should go join your family." Why is he here? Probably to deliver a message from his boss. Everett won't take kindly to losing his investment. Virginia squared her shoulders. Then I should hear what he has to say. Grant studied her for a moment, then nodded. Stay behind me all the same. They walked together to meet the rider, who reined his horse to a stop in a deliberate shower of dust. Wade Taylor was a lean, hard-faced man with cold eyes that fixed on Virginia with uncomfortable intensity. Well, he drawled. The boss said Sullivan had taken an interest, but he didn't mention how pretty the merchandise was. Grant's voice was dangerously soft. You're trespassing, Taylor. State your business and move on. Taylor smirked, shifting in his saddle. Mr. Everett wants his money back. $500 plus interest for breach of contract. There was no legal contract, Virginia said before Grant could answer. And the money has been spent. Taylor's eyes narrowed. Then maybe we'll take it out in other ways. Grant's hand moved casually to rest near his holstered pistol. I think you've delivered your message. Now ride out while you still can. The tension stretched between them, Taylor's horse shifting nervously beneath him. Finally, the foreman spat in the dust. This isn't over, Sullivan. Not by a long shot. His gaze slid to Virginia. Enjoy her while you can. Boss always gets what he wants in the end. With that, he wheeled his horse around and galloped away, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Virginia realized she had been holding her breath. He thinks I'm that weird. Let him think what he wants, Grant said grimly, watching the rider disappear. It's safer that way. Safer. Grant turned to her, his expression grave. Everett is a dangerous man, Virginia. If he believes you're under my protection as more than just an employee, he might think twice before making a move against you. Virginia felt heat rise to her cheeks at the implication. You want people to think we're involved? I'm suggesting that appearing to be unavailable might keep you safer than if Everett believes he can still claim you. Grant's eyes softened slightly. I'm not asking you to pretend anything you're not comfortable with. Just be aware that assumptions will be made. Virginia considered this, acutely aware of how their conversation might appear to an observer standing close together by the corral, then walking side by side to confront Taylor. In a territory where respectable women were scarce, such innocent interactions could easily be misinterpreted. I understand, she said finally, and I appreciate your honesty about the situation. Grant nodded, seeming relieved by her practical response. We should join the others. There's much to be done, and I imagine you'd like to get settled. As they walked toward the caretaker's cottage, Virginia found herself stealing glances at the tall cowboy beside her. There was something compelling about him beyond his obvious physical attributes, a sense of justice and quiet strength that she found herself drawn to despite her wariness. She had escaped one man's claim on her future only to find herself under another man's protection. The difference, she reminded herself, was choice. Grant Sullivan had given her options, not demands. Whether those options would lead to something more remained to be seen. For now, the weight of the money hidden in her trunk represented something she'd never truly had before: the power to determine her own destiny. She intended to use it wisely. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. The Peterson Ranch, which Grant had renamed Redemption, slowly transformed from a neglected property into a working cattle operation. Fences were mended, outbuildings repaired, and preparations made for the arrival of a herd Grant had purchased from a breeder in Texas. Virginia threw herself into the work, eager to prove her worth beyond the arrangement that had brought her there. Most mornings found her in the stables before dawn, caring for Liberty and the other horses. Grant had recognized her skill and put her in charge of the small remuda, a responsibility she took pride in. Her father, too, seemed to be finding his footing. Though still prone to dark moods and occasional bouts of drinking, Thomas Matthews had extensive knowledge of ranching that made him valuable to Grant's operation. For Emma's part, she had taken to helping Rosa Ramirez in the kitchen and garden, blossoming under the kind Mexican woman's tutelage. Virginia was brushing Liberty in the early evening light when Grant appeared at the stable door, his tall frame silhouetted against the setting sun. "She's coming along nicely," he commented, watching as the mare nuzzled Virginia's shoulder affectionately. Virginia smiled, running her hand along Liberty's sleek neck. "She's smart. Learns quickly. Like her namesake," Grant said with a slight smile. Virginia felt a flush of pleasure at the compliment. Their interactions over the past weeks had been primarily professional, yet she'd been increasingly aware of the moments when his gaze lingered on her a beat too long, or when their hands brushed accidentally during shared tasks. "I've been meaning to ask," she said, setting down the brush, "how you came to buy this place. You're not from around here." Grant leaned against the stable door. "No. I was born in Texas near San Antonio. Left home at 16. Worked cattle drives up to Kansas for a few years." He paused, seeming to consider how much to share. "After Catherine died, I needed a fresh start. Heard this place was available for a song since no one wanted land in drought country." "But you knew about the water," Virginia guessed. Grant nodded. Peterson had 3 artesian wells that most folks forgot about. Deep water protected from the drought. Manuel showed me when I first came scouting. Smart investment. If it works out. Grant straightened up. "That's actually why I came to find you. I need to ride into Tucson tomorrow for supplies and to arrange final details for the cattle drive. I was hoping you might accompany me." Virginia's surprise must have shown on her face, because he quickly added, "Rosa would come as chaperone, of course. But I could use your eye for horse tack, and there are some business matters I'd like your opinion on." "My opinion?" Virginia couldn't hide her skepticism. "On business. You've got a good head on your shoulders, Virginia. And since you own part of this operation now, it seems only fair." She blinked in confusion. "I don't own anything here." Grant's expression turned serious. "Actually, you do. I took the liberty of having the lawyer draw up papers while I was in town last week. 20% of Redemption Ranch belongs to you." Virginia stared at him, speechless. "The way I see it," Grant continued, "you've put that $1,000 to work here already. Might as well make it official. The papers are in my office whenever you want to sign them." "I don't understand," she finally managed. "Why would you do that?" Grant met her eyes steadily. "Because I believe in paying fair value. You've worked harder than anyone, and your knowledge of horses is saving me money already." "This isn't charity, Virginia. It's good business." She studied his face, looking for signs of deception or hidden motives, but found only sincerity. "What about my father? I've offered him 10% with the option to buy more shares when he's able." He seemed pleased with the arrangement. Virginia shook her head in wonder. "You're not like any man I've ever met, Grant Sullivan." Something flickered in his eyes, warmth mingled with something deeper. "Is that a yes to Tucson, then?" "Yes," she replied with a smile. "I'd be happy to accompany you and Rosa." "Good. We'll leave at first light." He tipped his hat and turned to go, then paused. "Oh, and Virginia, you might want to bring something nice to wear. There's a social at the hotel Saturday night. Thought we might make an appearance, meet some of the local ranchers." With that, he was gone, leaving Virginia with a fluttering sensation in her stomach that had nothing to do with business partnerships. The following morning dawned clear and promised heat. Virginia dressed carefully in her best traveling outfit, a forest green skirt and matching jacket over a cream-colored blouse, both lovingly mended but still presentable. She pinned her honey-brown hair up neatly, securing it with her mother's tortoiseshell combs, and added a touch of rose water behind her ears. As she packed a small valise, including the pale blue dress she'd been saving for a special occasion. Emma watched from her bed across their shared room. "You look pretty, Ginny," her sister observed with a knowing smile. "Is it because of Mr. Sullivan?" Virginia felt her cheeks warm. "Don't be silly. This is a business trip." Emma hummed skeptically. "That's why you're bringing your good dress and Ma's pearl earrings." "There's a social," Virginia explained, trying to sound matter-of-fact. "It would be rude not to dress appropriately. Rosa says Mr. Sullivan looks at you the way a thirsty man looks at water," Emma continued, clearly enjoying her sister's discomfort. "And Pa says, that's quite enough," Virginia interrupted, closing her valise with a snap. "Remember to help Rosa with the washing while I'm gone, and make sure Pa doesn't skip meals." Emma's expression turned serious. "Do you think Mr. Sullivan is courting you, Ginny?" Virginia paused, considering her answer carefully. "I think Mr. Sullivan is a complex man with good intentions but many secrets. Whatever his reasons for helping us, I'm grateful. Beyond that," she shrugged, "we'll see." The sound of a wagon pulling up outside saved her from further discussion. Virginia hugged her sister goodbye and headed out to meet Grant and Rosa, her mind turning over Emma's observations. Was Grant courting her? His offer of partnership in the ranch suggested something beyond ordinary employer-employee relations, yet he'd maintained a respectful distance. The more she learned about him, the more intrigued she became and the more aware she was of her growing attraction to him. The journey to Tucson took most of the day, with Grant driving the wagon while Virginia and Rosa sat beside him on the bench seat. As they traveled, Rosa regaled them with stories of the Peterson Ranch in its heyday, painting a picture of what redemption might become again. "My Manuel, he loved this land like his own child," Rosa said, her weathered face animated. "When the young Petersons left after their father died, he could not bear to leave also. Even with no pay, we stayed. The land, it needs people who love it, no?" "You showed remarkable faith," Virginia commented. Rosa's dark eyes twinkled. "Faith, yes, but also stubbornness. Manuel, he always said the right person would come someday." She patted Grant's arm. "And he was right." Grant seemed uncomfortable with the praise. "I just saw a good opportunity." "A man does not pay another man's debt without reason of the heart," Rosa replied sagely. "Just as he does not give away pieces of his ranch to a pretty girl without interest." "Rosa," Grant warned, though Virginia noticed the tips of his ears had reddened. The older woman just chuckled and launched into another story, this one about the great Tucson social events of years past. Virginia listened with half an ear, more aware of Grant's solid presence beside her and the occasional brush of his arm against hers as he guided the horses. They reached Tucson by late afternoon, a bustling town that made Virginia's small settlement of Copper Creek seem like little more than an outpost. Grant drove them directly to the Grand Hotel, where he had reserved rooms for their stay. "I have some business at the bank," he told Virginia after they'd checked in. "Would you like to join me? Or would you prefer to rest after the journey?" "I'll come," Virginia decided, curious about Grant's financial dealings and eager to see more of the town. Rosa announced her intention to visit her niece who lived nearby. "I will see you both for dinner," she said with a wink that made Virginia suspect the older woman was deliberately giving them time alone. The bank was an imposing stone building on the main street. Inside, the manager greeted Grant warmly, suggesting they'd done business before. "Mr. Sullivan, a pleasure as always. And who is this lovely lady?" "This is Miss Virginia Matthews, my business partner," Grant replied smoothly, causing the banker's eyebrows to rise in surprise. "Business partner? How progressive." Virginia smiled sweetly. "Mr. Sullivan recognizes that women are capable of more than just keeping house, Mr. Henderson." The banker cleared his throat. "Yes, well, shall we discuss the draft for the cattle purchase?" As the men began reviewing documents, Virginia found herself genuinely included in the conversation. Grant explained each transaction clearly, asked for her input on decisions, and deferred to her judgment on several matters related to the horse breeding program she'd proposed. By the time they left the bank an hour later, Virginia felt a new sense of confidence. Never before had a man, not even her father, treated her as an intellectual equal in matters of business. "You impressed Henderson," Grant commented as they walked down the boardwalk. "Not an easy feat." "You seem to have managed it," Virginia replied. Grant shrugged. "Money impresses bankers, but you impressed him with your knowledge and quick thinking. The way you calculated those breeding projections in your head faster than he could write them down," he grinned. "I thought his eyes might pop out of his head." Virginia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "My mother always said numbers were just another language. Once you learn to speak it, everything makes sense." "Your mother sounds like she was a remarkable woman." "She was," Virginia said softly. "I miss her every day." Grant's hand brushed against hers, a brief touch of comfort. "I understand. Losing someone who shaped your world. It leaves a hole that never quite fills in." Something in his tone made Virginia wonder if he was speaking of more than just Catherine. "You've lost someone else too, haven't you?" Grant was silent for a long moment as they continued walking. Finally, he said, "My wife, Rebecca, and our daughter, Emily. 7 years ago." Virginia's heart constricted. "I'm so sorry. Cholera," he continued, his voice controlled but strained. "It swept through our town while I was away on a cattle drive. By the time I got back." He shook his head. "Emily was only 4. Virginia gently touched his arm. "Grant, you don't have to. It's all right," he said. "It's been a long time. But losing them is why I understand what it means to have your future stolen from you. The difference is, no one could have prevented what happened to my family. What Everett planned for you, what your father agreed to, that I could stop." They had reached a small park where a few couples strolled in the late afternoon sun. Grant guided her to a bench beneath a cottonwood tree. "After Rebecca and Emily died, I couldn't stay in that house, that town. I drifted for years, taking whatever work came along. When Catherine was killed, it woke something in me. Made me realize I needed to stop running and make something of myself again." He gestured vaguely in the direction of Redemption Ranch. "So here we are." "Here we are," Virginia echoed softly, understanding now the shadows she sometimes glimpsed behind his smile. "Thank you for telling me." Grant's eyes met hers, warm and sincere. "I haven't told anyone else since I came to Arizona. But you deserve to know who you're in business with." "Is that all we are?" "Business partners." The words slipped out before Virginia could stop them. Grant's expression changed, softening in a way that made her heart beat faster. "What would you like us to be, Virginia?" Before she could answer, a loud voice interrupted them. "Sullivan, I thought that was you." A heavy-set man in an expensive suit approached, flanked by 2 others. Virginia immediately tensed at the sight of Harold Everett. His florid face set in a false smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. Grant stood smoothly, positioning himself slightly in front of Virginia. "Everett, didn't expect to see you in Tucson." "Business opportunities wait for no man," Everett replied, his gaze sliding to Virginia. "And this must be the lovely Miss Matthews I've heard so much about." Virginia rose, refusing to show fear. "Mr. Everett." Everett's smile widened, revealing yellowed teeth. "My dear, I believe you and I had an arrangement that was prematurely terminated." "Any arrangement was with my father, not me," Virginia replied evenly. "And Mr. Sullivan has ensured I'll never need to enter into such agreements." Everett's eyes hardened. "Has he now? And what exactly did you have to do to earn such generosity?" I wonder. Grant stepped forward, his voice dangerously quiet. Apologize to the Lady Everett. Or what? Everett sneered. This isn't your Texas, Sullivan. I own half this territory. You own nothing that matters, Grant replied coldly. Now apologize, or I'll make you regret your lack of manners. The tension crackled between them. Virginia noticed one of Everett's companions resting his hand near his holstered gun. Grant, she said quietly, touching his arm. He's not worth it. After a long moment, Grant nodded almost imperceptibly. You're right. Mr. Everett was just leaving. Everett's face darkened with rage, but something in Grant's steady gaze made him hesitate. This isn't over, Sullivan. The girl made a commitment. The girl is standing right here, Virginia interjected, her patience exhausted. And I've made no commitments except to myself. Now, if you'll excuse us, Mr. Sullivan and I have business to attend to. She took Grant's arm deliberately, feeling the tense muscles beneath his sleeve. Together, they turned and walked away, leaving Everett sputtering behind them. That was either very brave or very foolish, Grant murmured when they were out of earshot. Perhaps both, Virginia admitted, her heart still racing. But I refused to cower before him. Grant's expression was a mixture of concern and admiration. He's a dangerous enemy to make. We already made him our enemy when you outbid him for me, Virginia pointed out. At least now I've had the satisfaction of standing up to him myself. Grant's mouth quirked in a half-smile. You're a remarkable woman, Virginia Matthews. Their eyes met, and Virginia felt the earlier moment returning, that sense of standing on a precipice, about to take a leap into something unknown but exhilarating. This time it was Grant who broke the spell. We should head back to the hotel. Rosa will be waiting, and you'll want to rest before dinner. Virginia nodded, disappointed but understanding the wisdom of his restraint. They were in public, and their encounter with Everett had likely already set tongues wagging. Whatever was growing between them deserved privacy and careful consideration. As they walked back toward the hotel, Grant's hand found hers briefly, giving it a gentle squeeze that felt like a promise of conversations yet to come. The Grand Hotel's dining room sparkled with crystal and silver, the chandeliers casting a warm glow over the white-clothed tables. Virginia felt a flutter of nerves as she descended the stairs in her pale blue dress, her mother's pearl earrings catching the light. She had spent extra time on her appearance, arranging her hair in an elegant twist with a few soft curls framing her face. Rosa had helped her dress, offering quiet approval and a knowing smile that suggested the older woman understood exactly what Virginia was feeling. You look like a sunrise, Nina, she had said. He will not be able to take his eyes from you. Now, scanning the dining room, Virginia spotted Grant waiting near the entrance. He had traded his trail clothes for a well-cut dark suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and tall frame. His hair was neatly combed, and he'd shaved, revealing a strong jawline usually hidden beneath stubble. He turned as if sensing her presence, and Virginia had the satisfaction of watching his expression change as he caught sight of her, a flash of something like wonder crossing his face before he composed himself. Virginia, he said as she reached him, his voice lower than usual. You look beautiful. Thank you, she replied, a warm flush spreading across her cheeks. You clean up rather well yourself. His smile reached his eyes, creating fine crinkles at the corners. High praise from a woman who's mostly seen me covered in dust and horsehair. Rosa joined them, resplendent in a traditional Mexican dress of deep burgundy with intricate embroidery. Ah, you both look so fine, like in the old days when the governor would visit. The maitre d' led them to a table near the windows, where they could see the town's main street now lit by gas lamps. As they settled in, Virginia became aware of the glances directed their way, curious, speculative, and in some cases openly disapproving. A young woman dining with a handsome man, even with a chaperone, was bound to attract attention in territorial society. "Pay them no mind," Grant murmured, noticing her discomfort. "Tucson thrives on gossip. By tomorrow, they'll have found some new scandal to discuss." The dinner was elegant roast beef with all the trimmings, followed by a delicate lemon cake that melted on the tongue. The conversation flowed easily between the three of them, punctuated by Rosa's colorful stories and Grant's occasional dry observations about the other diners. Virginia found herself relaxing, savoring not just the fine food but the rare opportunity to be treated as a lady rather than a rancher's daughter or a hired hand. Grant was attentive without being overbearing, drawing her into discussions about books they'd both read and places they hoped to visit someday. When the orchestra in the corner began to play, several couples moved to the small dance floor. Grant watched them for a moment, then turned to Virginia. "Would you do me the honor?" he asked, extending his hand. Virginia hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in his. "I should warn you, it's been some time since I've danced. Then we'll be imperfect together," he replied with a smile that made her heart skip. Rosa made a shooing motion. Go. I will watch and remember when Manuel and I were young." Grant led Virginia to the dance floor, placing one hand respectfully at her waist while holding her right hand in his left. As they began to move to the waltz, Virginia was acutely aware of his physical presence, the warmth of his hand through the fabric of her dress, the subtle scent of his shaving soap, the way his eyes never left hers. "You dance very well for a cowboy," she observed, finding her rhythm easily in his capable lead. "My mother insisted all her sons learn," Grant replied. "Said no child of hers would shame her at social gatherings. I haven't had much occasion to use the skill lately, though." "How many brothers do you have?" "Two, both still in Texas. James runs the family ranch, and Michael is a doctor in Austin." A shadow crossed his face. "We're not as close as we once were. After Rebecca and Emily died, I wasn't." "Good company." Virginia squeezed his hand gently. "Grief changes us. I'm sure they understand." "Perhaps." Grant guided her through a turn, his movements fluid and confident. "What about you? Any family besides your father and Emma?" Virginia shook her head. "My mother was an only child, and my father's family disowned him when he married her. She was half Mexican on her mother's side, not suitable for the prestigious Matthews clan of Boston." "Their loss," Grant said simply. "Yes," Virginia agreed, touched by his matter-of-fact response. "It was. My mother was extraordinarily educated, talented with horses, and the strongest person I've ever known. She taught school before marrying my father, and she made sure Emma and I learned everything she knew." As they continued to dance, Virginia became aware of whispers and stares from the other couples. Following Grant's gaze, she spotted Harold Everett watching them from across the room, his expression thunderous. "Ignore him," Grant murmured. "He can't touch you here." "I'm not afraid," Virginia replied, lifting her chin. "Not anymore." Something fierce and protective flashed in Grant's eyes. "Good. Fear gives men like him power they don't deserve." The music ended, and Grant reluctantly released her, though his hand remained at the small of her back as he escorted her from the dance floor. Rather than returning directly to their table, he guided her toward the doors leading to the hotel's veranda. "Some air," he suggested. "It's getting rather warm in there." Virginia nodded, aware that Rosa was watching them with benign approval. The older woman gave a slight nod, signaling her permission for this small liberty. The night air was cool and refreshing after the crowded ballroom. The veranda was dimly lit and mostly deserted, with only one elderly couple seated at the far end. Grant led Virginia to the railing, where they could see the town spread below them and, beyond that, the vast darkness of the desert under a canopy of stars. "I never tire of this view," Grant said softly. "The stars seem closer out here, don't they?" Virginia looked up, feeling small beneath the immensity of the night sky. "My mother used to say that stars are the eyes of those who've gone before us, watching over the people they love." Grant was silent for a moment. "I like that thought. Rebecca loved the stars. Used to make up stories about the constellations for Emily." He paused. "Do you think you could be happy at redemption, Virginia? Truly happy? I mean, not just making the best of circumstances." The question caught her off guard with its directness. I think so. It already feels more like home than our place did, especially these last few years with the drought. And working with me? Is that something you could see continuing? Perhaps. Expanding?" Virginia turned to face him fully, her pulse quickening at the intent look in his eyes. "What exactly are you asking, Grant?" He took a deep breath. "I'm not a man who believes in dancing around important matters. These past weeks, getting to know you, working beside you, I've come to admire you greatly. Your strength, your intelligence, your kindness to Emma, and even to your father despite his failings." Virginia felt a flutter of hope in her chest. "I admire you as well. I know it soon," Grant continued, his voice low and earnest. "And given how we met, me essentially buying your freedom, I wouldn't blame you for being wary of my intentions. But I want you to know that I care for you, Virginia. Not as an employee or even just a business partner, but as a woman." Virginia's breath caught. "Grant, I'm not proposing marriage," he clarified quickly. "Not yet. That would be presumptuous. But I am asking permission to court you properly. To see if what I feel, what I hope you might come to feel, could grow into something lasting." The sincerity in his eyes moved her deeply. Here was a man who had suffered terrible loss, who had every reason to guard his heart, offering her the possibility of something she had never dared to hope for, a partnership of equals built on mutual respect and growing affection. "Yes," Virginia said simply. "I would like that very much." Grant's smile transformed his face, erasing years of sorrow in an instant. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to withdraw, he reached up to touch her cheek, his fingers gentle against her skin. "May I?" he asked, his gaze dropping to her lips. Virginia nodded, unable to speak past the emotion tightening her throat. Grant leaned in, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was tender and reverent, a promise rather than a demand. Virginia closed her eyes, savoring the warmth that spread through her at his touch. His hand cradled her face as if she were something precious, and she reached up to rest her palm against his chest, feeling his heart beating steadily beneath her fingers. The kiss was brief but profound, changing everything while confirming what she had already begun to suspect, that Grant Sullivan was a man unlike any other she had known, and that her heart was already his for the taking. When they parted, Grant kept his face close to hers, his eyes searching her expression. "All right?" he asked softly. Virginia smiled, feeling a new confidence unfurling within her. "More than all right." His answering smile was everything she could have wished for, warm, genuine, and filled with promise. Together they turned back to the stars, standing closer now, Grant's arm around her waist and her head resting lightly against his shoulder. In that moment, Virginia understood that the money Grant had given her, the freedom he had purchased, had been merely the beginning. The true gift was this, the chance to choose her own path and, perhaps, to walk it with a companion who valued her for exactly who she was. The remainder of their stay in Tucson passed in a whirl of activity. Grant introduced Virginia to several influential ranchers and merchants, always presenting her as his partner with a pride that warmed her heart. They selected supplies for the ranch, purchased new breeding stock for the horse program Virginia was developing, and signed the final contracts for the cattle drive that would bring the first substantial herd to redemption. Throughout it all, the change in their relationship added a new dimension to their interactions. Grant found reasons to touch her, a hand at her elbow, fingers brushing as they examined goods, a palm at the small of her back as they walked. Each contact, though proper enough for public view, sent a thrill of awareness through Virginia. Their evenings were spent in conversation that stretched late into the night, Rosa maintaining her chaperone duties, while tactfully allowing them space to become better acquainted. Virginia learned about Grant's childhood in Texas, his early years as a cowhand, the sweet courtship of his first wife, and the devastating loss that had sent him wandering. In turn, she shared stories of her mother's teachings, her dreams for the future, and her determination to ensure Emma had opportunities she herself had never been given. "I want her to have choices," Virginia explained as they sat in the hotel garden on their final evening in Tucson. "Education, independence, the freedom to determine her own life." Grant nodded thoughtfully. "The territory's changing. Women like you are helping to shape what it will become." "Women like me?" Virginia raised an eyebrow. "Strong, capable, unwilling to accept the limitations others try to impose." His eyes held hers. "The kind of women who make men like me realize how fortunate we are when you choose to share your lives with us." Virginia felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "You're surprisingly progressive for a Texas cowboy." Grant's smile held a hint of sadness. "Rebecca taught me a great deal about respecting a woman's mind. She was a schoolteacher when we met, had definite opinions about everything from politics to poetry. Drove me half crazy sometimes, but she made me think. She sounds wonderful." She was. Grant took Virginia's hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Different from you in many ways, but similar in the ones that matter." Virginia hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind. "Do you think, would she mind, that you're beginning to care for someone else?" Grant considered this seriously. "Rebecca loved life, embraced every moment of it. Her last words to me before I left on that cattle drive were to look after Emily and to remember that love is never wasted, no matter how brief." His voice grew husky with emotion. "I think she would be glad to know I'd found someone who makes me want to build a future again." Virginia squeezed his hand, deeply touched by his honesty. "Thank you for telling me that. It matters to me knowing you've had that kind of love before." "And now?" Grant asked quietly. "Now we see what kind of love we might build together," Virginia replied, her heart full of hope. They returned to Redemption Ranch the following day, the wagon loaded with supplies and their relationship fundamentally altered. Though they maintained proper decorum, there was no hiding the change from the perceptive eyes of those who knew them. Emma noticed immediately, cornering Virginia as she unpacked her valise. "Something happened in Tucson," she declared, eyes bright with curiosity. "You look different." Virginia smoothed her skirt, trying to appear nonchalant. "Mr. Sullivan has asked permission to court me." I accepted. Emma squealed with delight, throwing her arms around her sister. "I knew it. Rosa said he looked at you like you hung the moon, and she was right." "Emma, please," Virginia laughed, returning the embrace. "It's early days yet. But you like him? Truly?" Virginia couldn't suppress her smile. "Yes. Very much." "Is he a good kisser?" Emma asked mischievously. "Emma Matthews." Virginia gasped in mock scandal. "That is entirely inappropriate to ask." "So he did kiss you?" Emma crowed triumphantly. Virginia blushed, unable to deny it. "That is between Mr. Sullivan and myself." Emma flopped dramatically onto the bed. "It's so romantic, Ginny, like something from a novel. The handsome cowboy rescues the maiden from a terrible fate. They fall in love." "It's not quite that simple," Virginia cautioned, though she couldn't help being charmed by her sister's enthusiasm. Real life isn't a storybook. Grant and I are taking things slowly, getting to know each other properly. But you will marry him eventually? Emma pressed. Virginia hesitated. If our feelings continue to grow, and if he asks, I believe I would say yes. Emma's expression turned suddenly serious. What about Pa? He seemed odd when Grant told him about you too. Virginia had noticed their father's reaction as well, a strange mixture of relief and resentment. Pa has to come to terms with the fact that I'm making my own decisions now. He gave up the right to approve my choices when he tried to sell me to Harold Everett. He's been drinking less, Emma offered. And Mr. Sullivan says he's doing good work with the new fencing. That's something, Virginia acknowledged. I hope he can find his way back to being the father we remember from before Ma died. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Rosa stood in the doorway, her expression concerned. Virginia, Manuel has just come from town. Harold Everett is telling everyone that you and Grant, that you were improperly involved in Tucson. He is making terrible accusations. Virginia felt a cold knot form in her stomach. What exactly is he saying? Rosa hesitated, glancing at Emma. Perhaps the little one should not hear. I'm 13, not a baby, Emma protested. Virginia sighed. Tell me, Rosa. Emma should understand what we're facing. He says Grant bought you for immoral purposes, that your father sold you twice, once to him and once to Grant. He is threatening to have the sheriff investigate. Virginia's hands clenched into fists. That despicable liar. Where is Grant now? In his office with Manuel. They are discussing what to do. Virginia stood, smoothing her skirt with determined motions. Then I should join them. This concerns me more than anyone. She found Grant and Manuel poring over papers at the large oak desk in the study. Grant looked up as she entered, his expression grave. You've heard, he said, not a question. Virginia nodded. Rosa told me. Everett is spreading lies about us. Not just lies, Manuel added grimly. He has filed a formal complaint with the sheriff, claiming Grant has violated territorial law by keeping you for immoral purposes. That's absurd, Virginia exclaimed. We've done nothing improper. Rosa was with us the entire time in Tucson. Grant's jaw tightened. Everett doesn't care about the truth. He wants revenge for being thwarted, and he wants to ruin both our reputations in the process. What can we do? Grant exchanged a look with Manuel. There's one simple solution. We could marry immediately. As your husband, any arrangement between us becomes legally unassailable. Virginia's heart jumped, but she forced herself to think clearly. While I appreciate the practical aspects of that suggestion, I won't be forced into marriage by Harold Everett's spite, not even marriage to you, Grant. A small smile touched his lips despite the seriousness of the situation. I had a feeling you'd say that, and I agree. When if we marry, it should be because we choose it, not because we're cornered into it. Then what alternative do we have? Manuel cleared his throat. I have sent for Judge Wilson. He is a fair man, untouched by Everett's influence. He will be in Copper Creek tomorrow to hear statements. The judge is a good idea, Grant agreed, but we need more. We need to undermine Everett's credibility. Virginia paced the room, thinking aloud. Everett claims my father sold me to him, then to you. We know that's a lie. I was never legally bound to him in any way. And the money I gave you was a gift, not a purchase, Grant added. You're free to leave Redemption any time you choose, with that money still yours. Virginia stopped pacing, struck by a sudden realization. That's it. The money. I still have most of it. She turned to Grant, excitement building. What if we use it to expose what Everett really is? What do you mean? He's made his fortune taking advantage of desperate people, hasn't he? My father wasn't the first to fall into his trap. What if we find others? Build a case showing his pattern of exploitation. Grant's eyes lit with understanding. Show that he's the one operating outside the law, not us. Exactly, Virginia nodded. And I'm willing to bet that if we start asking questions in town, we'll find plenty of people with stories to tell. Manuel stroked his mustache thoughtfully. There is also Catherine Grant's cousin. Perhaps if we could prove something about her death. Grant's expression darkened. I tried that path before. The sheriff claimed the evidence was inconclusive. But you didn't have me then, Virginia pointed out. Or whatever allies we might gather now. A slow smile spread across Grant's face. You're remarkable, you know that? Most women would be hiding in their rooms after such accusations. I'm not most women, Virginia replied simply. And I won't let a man like Everett destroy what we're building here, both the ranch and us. The tenderness in Grant's eyes made her breath catch. Then we fight. Together. They spent the evening developing their strategy. Virginia would speak with the women in town, particularly those who worked at the hotel and saloon, who might have observed Everett's treatment of his previous wives. Grant would approach the merchants and ranchers who had dealt with Everett's business practices. Manuel would use his connections in the Mexican community, where Everett was known to be particularly exploitative. As for Thomas Matthews, Virginia's father had a role to play as well. Though initially reluctant, when Virginia confronted him with the full extent of Everett's accusations, implications that reflected poorly on him, as well, he agreed to provide a sworn statement that he had never legally contracted his daughter to anyone. I did wrong by you, Ginny, he admitted, shame evident in his bloodshot eyes. Let me try to make it right. The following day was a flurry of activity as they rode into town to gather evidence before the judge's arrival. Virginia, dressed in her most respectable outfit and accompanied by Rosa, visited the dressmaker, the hotel maid, and finally Mrs. Wilson, the judge's wife, who received them with cautious courtesy. I've heard the rumors, of course, Mrs. Wilson said as they sat in her parlor. Dreadful business. But I never put much stock in Harold Everett's claims. The man has buried 3 wives under suspicious circumstances. Virginia leaned forward eagerly. You knew his wives? Not the first one, that was before we came to the territory. But Catherine I knew well. Lovely woman, educated back east. She confided in me once that she feared for her safety. Mrs. Wilson's face hardened. A week later, she was dead. Accident, they called it. Did you tell the sheriff? For all the good it did, Mrs. Wilson sniffed. Sheriff Barnes has been in Everett's pocket for years. But my husband is a different matter entirely. By mid-afternoon, they reconvened at the town's small courthouse, where Judge Wilson had arrived to hear the case. The courtroom was packed. News of the scandal had spread quickly, and it seemed the entire town had turned out to witness the proceedings. Harold Everett sat at one table with his lawyer and the sheriff beside him, looking smug and confident. Grant, Virginia, and their assembled allies occupied the other side, their collected statements and affidavits piled before them. Judge Wilson, a stern-faced man with penetrating gray eyes, called the court to order. This is an unusual proceeding, he began. Mr. Everett has brought serious accusations against Mr. Sullivan and Miss Matthews. Before determining if formal charges are warranted, I will hear evidence from both sides. Everett's lawyer spoke first, painting a lurid picture of Grant as an unscrupulous man who had purchased Virginia for immoral purposes, challenging the legitimacy of her position at Redemption Ranch. When it was their turn, Grant stood. Your Honor, these accusations are not only false but designed to distract from Mr. Everett's own history of exploitation and possible criminal behavior. One by one, Their witnesses came forward. Thomas Matthews testified that he had never legally contracted his daughter to anyone, and that the money Grant had given Virginia was a personal gift with no conditions attached. Rosa swore that she had chaperoned Virginia and Grant in Tucson, and that their behavior had been entirely proper. But it was the testimony about Everett himself that turned the tide. 3 local businessmen described how Everett had threatened them when they couldn't repay loans. A former maid from his household spoke of bruises on his last wife's arms. And most damning of all, the town doctor reluctantly admitted that he had treated Catherine Everett for suspicious injuries multiple times before her death. Throughout it all, Virginia sat tall and dignified, refusing to show how deeply Everett's accusations had wounded her. When it was her turn to speak, she addressed the judge directly. "Your Honor, I stand before you as a free woman who has made her own choices. Mr. Sullivan offered me not just money but opportunity and respect when my own father failed me. If there is any impropriety in our relationship, it exists only in Mr. Everett's spiteful imagination, a man who, by all accounts presented here today, views women as property to be acquired and discarded." Judge Wilson listened intently, his expression giving nothing away. When all testimony was complete, he called for a brief recess to consider his judgment. As they waited in the tense courtroom, Grant reached for Virginia's hand beneath the table, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Whatever happens," he whispered, "I'm proud to stand beside you." When Judge Wilson returned, the room fell silent. "Having heard the evidence presented," he began, "I find no basis for Mr. Everett's accusations against Mr. Sullivan and Miss Matthews. Their business arrangement appears legitimate, and there is no evidence of impropriety in their personal conduct." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Everett's face darkened with rage. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "the testimony regarding Mr. Everett's own conduct is deeply troubling. I am referring these matters to the territorial prosecutor for further investigation, particularly regarding the circumstances of Catherine Everett's death." Virginia felt a wave of relief wash over her, followed quickly by vindication as Judge Wilson concluded. "Mr. Everett, I strongly advise you to cease your harassment of these individuals. And Sheriff Barnes, I expect your full cooperation with the prosecutor's investigation, regardless of your personal affiliations." As the courtroom erupted in conversation, Everett stormed out, pausing only to cast a venomous glare at Grant and Virginia. The threat in his eyes was unmistakable. This wasn't over. But for now, at least they had won. Their reputations were intact, and more importantly, the truth about Everett was finally beginning to emerge. Outside the courthouse, well-wishers surrounded them, offering congratulations and support. Virginia found herself embraced by women who had previously eyed her with suspicion, now openly admiring her courage. As they prepared to return to redemption, Grant drew Virginia aside. "You were magnificent in there," he said softly. "I've never seen anyone stand their ground with such grace." Virginia smiled, exhausted but exhilarated. "We did it together. All of us." "Yes, but it was your idea to fight back, to gather evidence." His eyes held hers intently. "Virginia, these past weeks getting to know you, working with you, watching you face down adversity, they've shown me something I thought I'd never find again." "What's that?" she asked, her heart quickening. "A reason to build a future, a partner worthy of sharing it with." He took her hands in his. "I know we agreed to take things slowly, and I still believe that's wise. But after today, I want you to know with absolute certainty that my intentions are serious. When the time is right, when you're ready, I hope to make redemption truly yours, not just as a business partner, but as my wife." The declaration, spoken simply but with profound sincerity, brought tears to Virginia's eyes. Grant Sullivan, if that was a proposal, it was a rather roundabout one. He chuckled, bringing her hands to his lips. Not a proposal, not yet. Promise. And when I do ask properly, there won't be any ambiguity about it. Virginia smiled, feeling a happiness she had never thought possible just months earlier when her father had tried to sell her future. I'll hold you to that, cowboy. Together, they rode back to Redemption Ranch, where the land was beginning to green with early summer rains, and the future stretched before them bright with promise. The weeks following their courtroom victory brought significant changes to Redemption Ranch. The promised cattle herd arrived from Texas, transforming empty pastures into productive grazing land. Virginia's horse breeding program began to take shape with the acquisition of a magnificent stallion she named Phoenix, symbolizing their rising fortunes from the ashes of drought and despair. Grant and Virginia's courtship progressed naturally, their days filled with shared work and purpose, their evenings with conversation and increasingly tender moments. Grant was attentive but patient, never pushing beyond the boundaries of propriety, despite the deepening of their feelings for one another. For Virginia, it was a revelation to be courted by a man who valued her mind as much as her appearance, who sought her opinion on everything from cattle prices to literature, and who treated her as a true partner in all things. By late summer, Redemption had become known throughout the territory as a rising star among ranches. Its innovative water management techniques, a combination of Grant's investment and Manuel's traditional knowledge, drawing visitors eager to learn their methods. More satisfying still was the news that Harold Everett had been indicted by the territorial prosecutor for financial crimes. While the evidence regarding Catherine's death remained circumstantial, the investigation had uncovered extensive fraud in his business dealings. Rumor had it he had fled to Mexico ahead of the authorities. One golden afternoon in September, Virginia was in the corral working with a young filly when she noticed Grant riding toward the ranch house. He had been in Tucson for 3 days on business, and she felt a leap of joy at his return that confirmed what she already knew: she had fallen deeply in love with him. She waited for him to stable his horse, watching as he spoke briefly with Manuel before spotting her and changing direction to head her way. Even from a distance, something about his stride seemed different, more purposeful, perhaps even nervous. "Welcome back," she called as he approached, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach. "How was Tucson?" Grant leaned against the corral fence, removing his hat. "Productive. The bank approved the loan for the new irrigation system." His eyes traveled over her face as if memorizing her features. "You look beautiful, Virginia, even covered in dust." She laughed, brushing ineffectually at her work clothes. "Now I know you've been gone too long if this looks beautiful to you." "You always look beautiful to me," he replied with such simple sincerity that her breath caught. "Are you busy right now? There's something I'd like to show you." Virginia's curiosity was piqued. "I can finish with the filly later." "What is it?" "It's a surprise, but you might want to change first." His eyes twinkled with amusement. "Something nice, perhaps?" Intrigued, Virginia handed the filly's lead to a stable boy and hurried to the cottage she still shared with Emma and their father. She bathed quickly and changed into her blue dress, the one she'd worn that first evening in Tucson when Grant had kissed her on the hotel veranda. Emma, returning from her lessons with Rosa, immediately sensed something significant in the air. "What's happening? Why are you getting all dressed up?" "Grant wants to show me something," Virginia explained, trying to sound casual as she pinned her hair. "He just got back from Tucson." Emma's eyes widened. "Ginny, do you think he's going to propose?" The thought had crossed Virginia's mind, sending equal waves of excitement and nervousness through her. "I don't know. Maybe. It could just be ranch business." Emma snorted. "Ranch business doesn't require your best dress and Ma's pearls." Virginia couldn't argue with that logic. With trembling fingers, she fastened the pearl earrings and took a final look in the small mirror. The woman who gazed back at her was transformed from the frightened girl who had stood in her father's study just 5 months earlier, facing a future not of her choosing. This woman's eyes were clear and confident, her posture straight with self-assurance, her heart open to possibilities she had never dared to imagine. "You look perfect," Emma declared, giving her a quick hug. "Go on now. Don't keep him waiting." Virginia found Grant waiting by the stables, now changed himself into clean clothes. He had saddled Liberty for her and his own gelding, Storm. "Are we going far?" she asked, accepting his help to mount. "Not too far," he replied with a secretive smile. "Just follow me." They rode at an easy pace away from the main ranch buildings, heading toward the western edge of the property where a small creek cut through a grove of cottonwood trees. Virginia had always thought it one of the prettiest spots on the ranch, especially now with the late afternoon sun filtering through the leaves, dappling the ground with patterns of light and shadow. As they approached, Virginia noticed something unusual: a small cabin, newly constructed, nestled among the trees near the creek. It hadn't been there the last time she'd ridden this way. "Grant," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "When did this appear?" His smile widened. "I had Manuel and some of the hands build it while I was arranging things in Tucson. Do you like it?" They dismounted, tethering the horses to a nearby branch. Grant offered Virginia his arm as they walked toward the cabin, a charming, solid structure with a wide porch and large windows that would catch both the morning and evening light. "It's lovely," Virginia said, genuinely impressed. "But what's it for? A line shack?" Grant chuckled. "Not exactly. Let me show you the inside." He opened the door with a flourish, standing back to let Virginia enter first. She gasped as she stepped inside. Far from the rough accommodations of a line shack, the cabin was beautifully finished, with polished wooden floors, a stone fireplace, and simple but elegant furniture. Fresh wildflowers stood in a vase on a small dining table set for two. "Grant," she breathed, turning slowly to take it all in. "This is beautiful, but I don't understand." Grant stood in the center of the room, suddenly looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "I thought, that is, I hoped it might be a home. Our home, if you want it to be." Virginia's heart began to race as the full implication of his words sank in. "Are you asking?" "Yes." Grant moved closer, taking her hands in his. "Virginia Matthews, I love you. I think I began falling in love with you the moment I saw you standing in your father's house, facing an impossible situation with more courage than most men I've known." Virginia felt tears pricking at her eyes. "Grant, these past months," he continued, his voice deep with emotion, "working beside you, watching you build something wonderful here at Redemption, seeing your kindness to everyone from Emma to the newest ranch hand. I've come to know that what I feel for you is the rarest kind of love, one based on respect and admiration as much as desire." He dropped to one knee, still holding her hands, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know we've only known each other a short time. I know your past makes you cautious about entrusting your future to anyone. But I promise you this: if you become my wife, your freedom will never be compromised. Your dreams will be as important as my own. We will be true partners in every sense." From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a ring, a perfect pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds in a gold setting. "This was my grandmother's. I had it resized for you in Tucson." Virginia could hardly breathe past the emotion tightening her throat. The thoughtfulness of not just the proposal but the cabin, a home built just for them, away from the main house where they could start their life together while still remaining connected to the ranch, moved her deeply. "Virginia Matthews," Grant said solemnly, "will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Virginia looked down at this man who had entered her life so unexpectedly, who had offered her choice when others had tried to take it away, who had seen her true worth from the beginning. The answer was as clear as the love shining in his eyes. "Yes," she whispered, then more strongly, "Yes, Grant Sullivan, I will marry you." Joy transformed his face as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to his feet and gathered her into his arms. His kiss was different from their previous ones, deeper, less restrained, a promise of the passion they would soon be free to express as husband and wife. When they finally parted, both breathless, Grant rested his forehead against hers. "I was so afraid you might think it was too soon." Virginia smiled, her hands framing his beloved face. "When something is right, time becomes irrelevant. And this us feels more right than anything I've ever known." They spent the evening in their future home, sharing the meal that Rosa had prepared and left warming by the fire, talking about their plans and dreams. Grant wanted a small, simple wedding at Redemption, with just their closest friends and family present. "I've sent telegrams to my brothers," he told her. "I'm hoping they'll come. I want them to meet the woman who brought me back to life." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the windows, Virginia rested her head against Grant's shoulder, her heart fuller than she had ever thought possible. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his fingers gently stroking her hair. "I'm thinking about that day you rode up to our ranch," she replied. "How desperate and afraid I felt. How I thought my life was over before it had really begun. And now," Virginia lifted her head to meet his gaze, letting him see all the love she felt reflected in her eyes. "Now I know it was just beginning. You didn't just save me from Harold Everett, Grant. You showed me what was possible when a woman is truly valued not as property, but as a person." Grant's expression grew serious. "You saved yourself, Virginia. All I did was offer you the means. Your courage, your determination, those were always yours. Perhaps," she acknowledged, "but you were the first man besides my father to believe in me. The first to see me as more than just Thomas Matthews' daughter or some man's future wife. And I'll spend the rest of my life continuing to see you, Virginia Matthews. All of you, your strength, your intelligence, your remarkable heart." He kissed her gently. "Soon to be Virginia Sullivan, if you'll take my name." "I will," she said softly, proudly. As twilight deepened into night, they reluctantly prepared to return to the main ranch house. Their wedding would take place in 2 weeks' time, enough for Grant's brothers to arrive from Texas, but not so long that they would have to endure the sweet torture of waiting to begin their life together. Riding back under a canopy of stars, Virginia thought of her mother's words about the eyes of loved ones watching from above. She imagined her mother seeing her now loved, respected, free to chart her own course with a man who valued her independence as much as her affection. Her father had sold her future for cash, it was true, but Grant Sullivan had paid more and let her keep it herself. In doing so, he had given her the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that her worth was immeasurable, her potential limitless, and her heart freely given, the most precious currency of all. 2 weeks later, on a perfect autumn day with the mountains painted gold and crimson by changing leaves, Virginia Matthews became Virginia Sullivan in a simple ceremony at Redemption Ranch. They exchanged vows beneath an arch of wildflowers erected near the creek beside their new cabin, with Emma as bridesmaid and Grant's brother James as best man. The gathering was small but meaningful. Grant's brothers, James and Michael, who had traveled from Texas, Manuel and Rosa and their extended family, neighboring ranchers who had become friends, and even Virginia's father, sober and subdued but making a visible effort to be supportive. Virginia wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully altered by Rosa's skilled hands, and carried a bouquet of wildflowers gathered by Emma that morning. When Grant saw her walking toward him, his expression of wonder and devotion brought tears to her eyes. The territorial judge who had cleared their names months earlier performed the ceremony, his words emphasizing partnership and mutual respect as the foundation of their union. When Grant slipped the simple gold band onto Virginia's finger to join her engagement ring, His hands were steady, but his voice shook with emotion as he recited his vows. I, Grant Sullivan, take you, Virginia Matthews, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to honor your independence even as we build our lives together, to respect your mind as well as cherish your heart, to stand beside you as your equal partner in all things, and to love you faithfully all the days of my life. Virginia's answering vows, spoken clearly despite the emotion tightening her throat, echoed his promises of partnership and added her own pledge of trust and commitment. As Judge Wilson pronounced them husband and wife, Grant gathered her into his arms for a kiss that seemed to seal not just their marriage but a new chapter in both their lives, one written together, by choice and with love. The celebration continued into the evening, with a feast prepared by Rosa and her daughters, music provided by local musicians, and dancing under the stars. Grant's brothers made heartfelt toasts, expressing their joy at seeing the shadow lift from Grant's eyes, while Emma tearfully thanked him for bringing security and happiness back to their family. As the night deepened and guests began to depart, Grant led Virginia away from the festivities toward their cabin, now truly their home. Lanterns had been lit along the path, and when they reached the porch, Grant surprised her by sweeping her into his arms. Tradition, he explained with a grin, carrying her across the threshold. Inside, the cabin was transformed, fresh flowers in every room, candles casting a warm glow, the bed turned down and strewn with rose petals. Virginia recognized Rosa's romantic touch and made a mental note to thank her later. Now, though, as Grant set her gently on her feet and they stood facing each other as husband and wife for the first time, all thoughts of others faded away. In the privacy of their home, they could finally express the passion they had kept carefully contained during their courtship. Grant's kiss was tender at first, then deepened as Virginia responded with equal fervor. His hands, always so respectful before, now explored the curves of her body through the silk of her wedding dress, awakening sensations she had never experienced. I love you, Virginia Sullivan, he murmured against her lips. More than I thought it was possible to love again. Show me, she whispered, trusting him completely as she had trusted no one before. Their wedding night was a revelation, Grant's patient tenderness guiding her through initial nervousness to discover a passion that matched his own. In his arms, Virginia found a completion she had never imagined, their bodies expressing what their hearts already knew, that they were made for each other, perfect counterparts in every way. Afterward, lying in the circle of his arms as moonlight spilled through the window, Virginia traced the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. Thank you, she said softly. Grant captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. For what? For seeing me, really seeing me, when others looked past me or saw only what they wanted to see. Grant's eyes, still heavy-lidded with satisfaction, held hers with quiet intensity. I'll never stop seeing you, Virginia. Every day, I'll look at you with new eyes and find something else to love. She smiled, believing him completely. I used to think freedom meant being alone, answering to no one. But this being with you feels more like freedom than anything I've known. That's because true freedom isn't the absence of connection, Grant replied, his fingers combing gently through her unbound hair. It's finding someone who wants you to soar and gives you the space to do it. Virginia nestled closer, her head finding the perfect spot on his shoulder. I think I'll soar higher with you beside me. His arms tightened around her. We'll fly together then. In the years that followed, Redemption Ranch flourished beyond even their most optimistic projections. Grant's innovative ranching methods combined with Virginia's exceptional horse breeding program created an operation that became famous throughout the territory and beyond. Virginia's 20% ownership soon grew as her contributions to the ranch's success became increasingly valuable. By their 5th anniversary, she and Grant were truly equal partners in every sense, their business acumen complementing each other as perfectly as their personal qualities. Emma, under Virginia's guidance and with Grant's wholehearted support, attended a prestigious school for young ladies in San Francisco, returning with an education that would allow her to pursue her own dreams rather than depend on marriage for security. Thomas Matthews gradually found redemption of his own, overcoming his dependence on alcohol and eventually becoming Redemption's trusted foreman when Manuel semi-retired. Though the scars of his near betrayal of Virginia never fully healed, his genuine remorse and subsequent devotion to her happiness went a long way toward rebuilding their relationship. As for Harold Everett, he never returned to Arizona territory. Reports placed him in Mexico for a time, then further south in Guatemala, where he eventually died of fever, his ill-gotten fortune squandered and his name all but forgotten. On a warm spring morning in 1880, 5 years after Grant had first ridden up to the Matthews Ranch, Virginia stood on the porch of their cabin, expanded now to accommodate their growing family, watching her husband teach their 3-year-old son Robert to ride his first pony. Beside her, cradled in her arms, their 6-month-old daughter Catherine slept peacefully, untroubled by the excited shouts of her brother. Grant looked up, catching Virginia's eye across the yard, and the love in his gaze was as fresh and powerful as it had been on their wedding day. He whispered something to Robert, then lifted the boy from the pony and set him on the ground. The child ran toward the house, his father following at a more measured pace. "Mama!" Robert called, his face alight with excitement. "Did you see? I rode all by myself." Virginia laughed, crouching awkwardly to embrace him with her free arm. "I saw. You're a natural horseman, just like your father." "And his mother," Grant added, joining them on the porch. He dropped a kiss on Virginia's upturned face, then gently touched their daughter's downy head. "How are my girls this morning?" "Perfect," Virginia replied, leaning against him as he slipped an arm around her waist. "Just perfect." As they stood together, a family created through choice and love rather than obligation, Virginia thought about the strange twist of fate that had brought them to this moment. Her father's desperate decision to sell her future had led, through Grant's intervention and her own courage, to a life richer and more fulfilling than she could have imagined. The $1,000 that had purchased her freedom long since invested in redemption and multiplied many times over had been merely the beginning. The true fortune had been finding a partner who valued her independence even as he cherished their connection, who saw her strength as complementary to his own rather than threatening. In Grant's arms, with their children beside them and the ranch spreading green and prosperous around them, Virginia knew she had found something precious beyond price. A love freely given and freely returned, a partnership of equals building a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. "What are you thinking?" Grant asked, his voice low and intimate in her ear. Virginia smiled up at him, her heart full. "I'm thinking that some things can't be bought or sold. They can only be freely given." Grant's eyes, still capable of making her pulse quicken after all these years, held hers with perfect understanding. Like love, she agreed, standing on tiptoe to kiss him as their son giggled and their daughter slept on, secure in the knowledge that her future, unlike her mother's, would always be her own to shape. And in that moment, under the vast Arizona sky that had witnessed their journey from strangers to beloved partners, Virginia and Grant Sullivan reaffirmed the truth they had discovered together. That the most valuable possession is not land or money or power, but the freedom to choose one's own path and the blessing of finding someone to walk it with you, side by side, heart to heart, for all the days of your life.